It's a new month, and so that means that we get to decide which one of these books I'm going to be reading by spinning this. It's time to play Fiction Roulette. And yes, we do have a new wheel, so hopefully it spins a little bit better so you lot can stop complaining. It actually did spin better. It does spin better. Maybe some of you had a point. So as always, I'm going to let the wheel decide which books I read and review in the month of November, the penultimate month. Can you believe it? And the wheel is filled with things that I'm excited to read. And what I do every month is I just spin the wheel 4 times. I usually read more than 4 books each month, but this just nails down, because I'm a little bit indecisive sometimes, this nails down 4 books that I'm definitely going to be reading no matter what. And then on top of that, I'll also let you know what the channel's book club has chosen for all of us to read together for the PBJ Book Club this month. And I'll let you know how you can join in that read along if you're interested. I'll tell you all about that at the end of the video. But first of all, let's talk about which books are on the wheel for the month of November. The first book on the wheel is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So this one is basically a retelling of a Greek myth of Achilles and the siege of Troy. It's interesting, the battle in Troy, because historians agree that probably there was a place called Troy and probably there was a battle that happened there. Information starts getting a little bit spotty whether or not there were sons of literal gods that were fighting in that war. But yeah, so this book is basically a retelling of that story, but in a way that feels really human, less about gods throwing lightning bolts and more about 2 people trying to work out their relationship with one another in the midst of a battle. Achilles is the first character. He is a demigod. He's the son of a goddess and a king. You know, Achilles, he's the golden boy of Greece. He's the greatest warrior to have ever lived on the face of the earth. And, he's the kind of bloke who, he has aura. He steps into a room, everyone turns around, wow, it's Achilles. And then you've got the main character of this book, who I believe his name is pronounced Patroclus or Patroclus. I think it's Patroclus, and he's kind of the opposite of Achilles. He's quiet, he's awkward, he actually gets kicked out of his home after a violent incident happens, and when he ends up meeting Achilles, they form a really close bond that doesn't exactly fit into what everyone expects from them. And together they train as warriors under the tutelage of this centaur named Chiron. And he's like the classic mentor type. And then everything after that sort of shifts when Helen of Sparta is kidnapped. All of the Greek heroes gather up together. They're gearing up for a war with Troy, and Achilles is thinking to himself, this is it, this is the opportunity, this is what I was made for, to charge into battle. And he's chasing after glory. And then you've got Patroclus, who just kind of goes along with him because he cares about Achilles and he wants to look after him. A lot of people seem to really enjoy the emotional intensity of this book and the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. I read Circe by Madeline Miller, really loved it. It was a slow burn, it was emotional, it was very beautifully told. So I'm expecting the same kind of vibe with this book as well. Honestly, most people I've spoken to, though, most of them preferred The Song of Achilles to Circe. So, pretty good. The next book I'd love to read in the month of November is The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. So it's funny because this is a book that I've put up, I think maybe 2 or 3 times on the PBJ Book Club options. It always performs well, but it seems like it always ends up in like 2nd or 3rd place in the poll. So yeah, I've just decided, you know what, I'm going to put it on the wheel and see if it comes up there. So yeah, this is the story of Harry August. He is a man who lives his life over and over again. So when he reaches the end of his life, he passes away, and then the next thing, he's reborn as a baby again, and it just happens over and over again. He lives the same life, he's the same person, but every time he lives his life, he remembers all of the lives that he lived previously. So it's kind of like a Groundhog Day scenario, except that instead of living the same day over and over again, Henry is living his entire life over and over again. Except this time, when he lays on his deathbed once again and he thinks, here we go again, I'm going to wake up as a baby again, a young girl that he's never seen before comes to his bedside, and she seems to know what's going on. And she says to him, listen, I've been searching for you and I need you to send a message. And that's all I know about this one. So this sounds like a fun mystery. I quite like time loops as well when they're done well. And usually time loops raise questions about fate and choices and free will. And I've wanted to read this one for a while. Hopefully it comes up on the wheel because I'm very interested to read it. The next book I don't have a physical copy of. It actually just came out recently in the last month or two, and that is King Sorrow by Joe Hill. This is about a character named Arthur Oakes, who's a student in, I think it's called Rackham College in Maine, and he's kind of a bookworm. He spends most of his time reading and studying in this beautiful library in the university. It's like the snow is falling outside. I think this book has a kind of, what do you call it? Dark academia vibe, which I know a lot of you nerds really like a dark academia vibe. I'm just saying, I know you and you like that sort of thing. So just a heads up. And then one day, Arthur Oakes's quiet little life gets disturbed when a local drug dealer forces him, and I don't know how they force him, but I would imagine either through blackmail or through violence or some kind of threat, they force him into stealing these rare books from the college library. And because Arthur is just a lover of books, this is like sacrilege, you know? And so he doesn't know how to get out of it, but then his friend tells him about this old book that's called the Crane Journal. And supposedly it's sort of bound in the human skin of its author. And it has these magical abilities, and you're able to summon this creature that would fix the problem for him. What they don't know when they summon this creature is that it's one of those Faustian bargains, you know? And so they learn that every year from now on, they are going to have to offer the creature a new sacrifice. And if they don't do it by the end of the year, then he will come for them instead. So I like Joe Hill a lot. Whenever I talk about Joe Hill, I feel a bit bad because I feel this compulsion to mention that he is Stephen King's son. But I think I need to stop doing that, really, because he's just a great writer in his own right. He doesn't need to be attached to his dad in any way. So, you know, as far as his books go, it's funny because I don't feel the same compulsion whenever I talk about Stephen King to say, oh, by the way, if you don't know, he's Joe Hill's dad. Do you know what I mean? So I think I need to stop doing that. But yeah, the more of Joe Hill that I read, the more of a fan I become. The next book I'd really like to read is Grief is a Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. So this is a bit different to what I usually read. This book is about a man and his two sons. They've recently lost their wife and mother, and they're learning how to live with her sudden death. They're just lost in grief. Each of them are handling it in their own way in their little London apartment. The father is an academic who's working on a book about Ted Hughes, and he's just trying to keep things together. But mostly he's sort of just drifting through his days. and he's unsure how he's supposed to move forward. He doesn't know what to do. His sons, understandably, are like wild and chaotic, and with their dad kind of like drifting around the house, they're unsupervised, and so their sadness is showing up as restlessness and chaos. And in the midst of all this grief, this crow arrives, and he's this sort of strange talking bird who becomes simultaneously both a source of comfort and also disruption. And he is, I think, a representation of grief. So in a way, the crow is like a caretaker for the dad and his two sons, but also he's a troublemaker. And he just says, I'll stay here until you don't need me anymore. And so he kind of like guides the family as they slowly find their footing again. And the father starts to write more, and the boys begin to sort of like shake out of it. Grief is one of those things that you never really can get over, but it's sort of like as time passes, you just learn to live with it, right? And so together they all rebuild their lives. This book is told in these short, shifting passages that blend story with poetry and reflection. So rather than telling a story, I think that this book tries to capture what grief actually feels like, and what loss feels like from the inside. It sounds like a sentimental book, but apparently in places it's the exact opposite of that. It's kind of more brutal and bleak, sometimes funny as well, in other parts. I'd really like to read this one. This next book, I don't know why, I don't know if this is true, but it feels like November is the month to read it. And I can't explain what I mean by that. I think it just seems like such an autumnal book, and that is The Fifth Season. This is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I've been wanting to read this book for ages. It won the Hugo Award for Best Novel in 2016, and actually the entire trilogy made history by winning the award 3 years in a row. The story is set in a world that is constantly hit by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, all of these different natural disasters, and society has had to kind of like adapt and redesign itself in order to survive all of these catastrophes. Some people, known, I think it's pronounced Origins, they have the ability to control seismic activity. And so their power makes them incredibly valuable on one hand to society, but on the other hand, because they're so powerful, they're also feared. And so they're kind of like outcasts. The book follows 3 women at different stages of their lives. They're all connected by their abilities and also by the larger mystery of what is happening to this world. Why is this happening? Why is the world crumbling? The world building is supposed to be incredibly detailed and immersive, with layered storytelling, sort of these complex characters that all have flaws. This is another book with a lot of mystery behind it. I think I'd be really excited to get started with this trilogy because, once again, all 3 books won the Hugo Award. So if I like this one, chances are I'll like the other 2. So hopefully I enjoy this one if it comes up on the wheel. The next book I do have a physical copy of, and it's one of the most beautiful books that I own, possibly the most beautiful book that I own. And it's over here, but I don't know if you can see that, but it's covered by all of these little fake Halloween cobwebs. So I don't want to get it out, because that means I have to move all the cobwebs out the way and it'll be all messy. But if it comes up, then I'll remove it then. But that book, if you just see it in the middle there, it's The Two Towers, which is the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, it doesn't really need much explanation, I don't think. It's one of the most famous fantasy books of all time, probably the most famous fantasy trilogy of all time. In this book, we continue to follow Frodo on his journey after the events of the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm a massive fan of the films. I really liked The Hobbit and also The Fellowship, which I read both of those this year. They were both a lot of fun, and they're very different in tone, I think, to the movies. I didn't like Tom Bombadil, and I know that when I gave my review of The Fellowship of the Ring, I I said how much I didn't like Tom Bombadil. Some of you got annoyed with me about that. Oh, I got to be honest. If I'm not honest, then there's no point in me talking about these books. But some of you agreed with me as well. Some of you said, yeah, I can't stand that bloke. I don't know what differences there's going to be in the second book to the second movie, but I'm sure it's going to be great. The next book on the wheel is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I never know how to pronounce this author's name. Is it Mantel or is it Mantel? I think it's Hilary Mantel. So Wolf Hall was set in England during the 1520s when Henry VIII is just famously desperate for a male heir, and the country's future feels unstable. His marriage to Catherine has lasted 20 years, but even after these 20 years, she still hasn't produced a son. And so he says, all right, enough with this. I need a son. By the way, never taking any responsibility. Right? It takes two, mate. It takes two. And so anyway, he says, I want this union annulled so that I can marry Anne Boleyn. And the Pope refuses. And so now Henry VIII is caught between his personal desires. He wants to have this son, but also the political limits that the church is placing upon him. And at the center of this struggle is Thomas Cromwell, who is a man from, I think, a pretty modest background. He's risen through the ranks with his intelligence and his charm and his determination. He's a very practical man, and he's strategic, and he's not afraid to put pressure on certain pressure points when that's required of him. And as Cromwell works to secure Henry's wishes, he also has to navigate all of the shifting loyalties within the court and people with these dangerous tempers and morally grey characters. It sounds really dense with political intrigue, like during that Tudor era, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to read. Honestly, even though I'm English, I don't know a great deal about Tudor history. I know a bit that I learned at school. I've forgotten a lot of it. So this is going to be a fresh story for me. The next book I'd love to read, I also don't have a physical copy of this one. It's The Institute by Stephen King. The Institute begins with a 12-year-old boy named Luke, and he's this genius. That moniker gets thrown around a lot, but I think he really is a genius. He's a very gifted student. He's living a bit of a quiet life in Minneapolis until one night his parents are killed and he gets taken away by these strangers in the middle of the night. And he wakes up, and when he wakes up, it looks like he's in his bedroom, but there's a couple of subtle differences in the room. One not so subtle difference is that there's no window. And he sort of looks around and he quickly realizes, wait a minute, what is this place? Goes out into the hall and he sees that he's trapped in a facility. And this facility is known as the Institute. And there at the Institute, Luke meets these other children who were also abducted recently in the same way that he was, and each of them have special abilities. They're able to either read minds, or they're able to move objects with their mind, and they all live in a section of the Institute called the front half. And this is where all of the staff run these tests on them. And if the children cooperate, then they're going to give them these rewards, like snacks, little privileges, like televisions in their room, these little small comforts that they can have. But if you resist, you get badly punished. And eventually, the idea is that all of these children are going to be sent to the other section of the Institute called, predictably, the back half. No one knows what goes on in the back half, but no one ever comes back from the back half to the front half. The Institute is run by a team of scientists who I think they believe that the children's powers can be harvested for a greater purpose. I don't know what that purpose is. Luke is, again, he's this intelligent and stubborn young boy. He tries to understand the system, tries to work it out and look for a way out for him and his friends. I'd really like to read this book. A lot of Stephen King fans have this as one of their favorite Stephen King books. They say that Luke, as a main character, is really likable. He's kind of easy to root for, and it's supposed to be fast-paced right from the beginning. Really high stakes, a lot of tension that builds up and then just never goes back down, just a constant tension. I like it when Stephen King mixes horror with sci-fi and thriller. Hopefully that one comes up. If it comes up on the wheel, then I shall buy a physical copy, because I have a shelf dedicated to Stephen King, all nicely decorated and all that, and I feel like the Institute should be on that shelf once I read it. The next book I'd love to read is The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. So this year I've read a couple of Christopher Buehlman books, and they were very different from one another. One of them was Between Two Fires, that I read along with the PBJ Bookclub, and the other was The Lesser Dead, which is like a vampire book. I enjoyed both of them. This book is a fantasy about a thief who is heavily in debt with this group called the Takers Guild. And this is like an organization that trained him and covered every aspect of thievery, so like knife fighting, picking pockets, climbing up walls, manipulating people, also a little bit of magic. And so they have trained him to be what he is today. And in order to start paying off the debt that he owes to the Takers Guild, he sets up this kind of like trap on this forest highway. It's a little bit like a Dick Turpin kind of thing. And here he hopes to rob any carriages that come by, but he ends up getting a little bit unlucky, and he tries to rob the exact wrong person that you would want to rob, a very powerful person. He comes across this character called Galva, who is a death goddess. She's currently trying to find her queen, who was captured by these mythical creatures. And so the two of them end up traveling together. She kind of thinks that he might be useful to her, and they face off against all of these supernatural enemies. This book is supposed to have some, although it's set in like this fantastic fantasy world, it's supposed to be very gritty, have some dense world building full of history and lore. I love sinking my teeth into that kind of thing. And there's supposed to be also a good mixture of action sequences and small emotional, intimate moments between the characters where they kind of reflect on their journey. I think that's really important as well to a good story, to make me care about the characters. And then the next book I'd love to read is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I think we've got a good variation this month of different genres. The Sun Also Rises is about a group of American and British expatriates who are living in Europe after World War I. The main character is a guy called Jake Barnes, who is a journalist who was injured during the war, and also another character named, I'm going to remember her name. Her name is Lady Brett Ashley. I think I got it right. I'm pretty sure I got it right. She's this charismatic woman who he loves, but he can't be with for some reason. I don't know why. I haven't read the book yet. Along with their friends, they kind of drift through Paris. They're drinking, they're arguing, they're chasing these sort of frivolous distractions, and then they travel to Spain for the bullfights, to go and watch the bullfights there. I lived in Spain for 4 years. I'm very proud to say that I never went to go see a bullfight. I don't like them. I don't like that. It's unfair. It's unfair on the ball. But these people, they like bullfights. All right, fair enough. I think the idea behind this book is that it captures that feeling of a generation of people who are trying to find meaning after the trauma of war and after the chaos that they lived through. Maybe now things are a bit too quiet and they kind of don't know how to process their emotions, and they're feeling restless and aimless and emotionally cut off from the world in a weird way. It's like they insulated themselves from war, and now that the war is no longer there, that insulation still exists. Oh, that was nice. I really like the way that Hemingway writes. He's got this simple and direct style, and he's got a great way, I think, of capturing familiar emotions that are difficult to put words to. Okay, so those are your contestants. You can see that they're all present here on the wheel. And so what I'm going to do is spin the wheel to see what is the first book that I'm going to be reading in the month of November. But just before I do that, I want to take an opportunity to thank all of the Patreon members for supporting this channel. A big thank you to the cult members. A massive thank you to the named men. And an extra special thank you to the quartet. All of you make this channel possible, and I'm so glad that we get to build this reading community together. Seriously, thanks so much for being a part of it. And if you like this channel and you'd like to support it and get some perks like the Metallic Paperback Journeys bookmark, access to some of the exclusive rooms on the Discord server, and also access to the PBJ Bookclub, then you can click on the link in the description below. Okay, anyway, that's good. All right, so now I'm going to spin this wheel, and then afterwards, I'm going to reveal what the PBJ Bookclub chose for us all to read together in the month of November as well. So we're going to actually reveal 5 books, but the wheel's just going to pick 4 of them. All right? Yep, understood. Oh, by the way, this is the virgin voyage of this wheel, so hopefully it picks some good ones. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it in the bin, and we're just going to use the old one. You know, as always, one thing that isn't going to change is that we're going to go by this thing here. This I call it the dongle, and we're going to go by this, not by this, because this thing can sort of like land in the middle and be a little bit indecisive. So we go by this. All right, so let's go. The first spin of the new wheel. Here we go. The Institute by Stephen King. The old wheel seemed to like Stephen King quite a lot. The new wheel, just the same. So The Institute is the first book that I'm going to be reading in the month of November. Let's go again. The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, excellent. So, all right, 2 good choices. Well done, Will. Well done. It does spin a bit better. All right, so let's spin another 2 times. The Institute again. As we know, the wheel always picks at least 1 book twice, and so it's nice to see that continues with this one. We've never had a month where the wheel didn't pick the same book twice. That's bizarre, honestly. Okay, so let's spin again. King's Sorrow by Joe Hill. So I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but we've done it. We've got father and son. We've got Stephen King and Joe Hill, fantastic. And now we're going to spin it one last time for the month of November. Oh man, so many good books that I'm going to miss out on. But all right, anyway, let's go. The Fifth Season. Yes, I said that November was the month to read it, and so it turns out that is true. So yeah, that's pretty good. But here's the question. I've got a question for you. Do you think that you can guess what I'm going to rate each one of these books? You can give it a go on the Discord, and if your guesses are the most accurate, then you will win an Amazon. I always want to call it a voucher, but no, it's not a voucher. It's a gift card. And, you know, with that gift card, maybe you buy yourself a nice book, right? That'd be nice. We've got lots of fun and games over on the Discord. Oh, by the way, I just want to take an opportunity to thank the Order of Discordia. Thanks so much for running the place. They really put together all of these fun games, and they like to get everyone involved. So if you enjoy books, then you can find all of that stuff over on the Discord. And all of my other links are down there as well, including the book club, which brings us to... what are we going to be reading together in the month of November? What did the PBJ Book Club collectively decide that we would be reading together? That book is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This one's going to be nice. I can already tell. I've never read anything by Shelby Van Pelt, but I think a lot of people compare this author to Frederick Buckman, the person who wrote Beartown and also famously A Man Called Uwe. So yeah, it's kind of like that sentimental stuff. I think it's going to be nice. We read a lot of horror, a lot of heavy stuff, and so this will be a nice change of pace. If you're interested in reading this along with the rest of the book club, then it's not too late. These are the dates that we're going to be reading and discussing the chapters of the book. And I'll put the link to the Patreon down below so that you can sign up for that if you're interested. This is also the perfect time to vote on what the book club will be reading in December. So you can see all of the options over there as well. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be reading in the month of November. And if you'd like to see what I read in October for spooky season, where I just read only horror books, then you can click up there to see that video. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And as always, happy reading.